I had always thought night shifts at the petrol station would be boring. Lonely, sure, but boring. That's why I took the job. Extra pay for staying awake when no one else wanted to. But boredom was never the problem. The problem was what I saw, and what still follows me. The station sat alone on a stretch of highway that most people avoided unless they were desperate for fuel. One flickering neon sign, a couple of pumps, and a convenience store stocked with dusty snacks and cheap coffee. Beyond the glow of the lamps was only darkness, flat fields and black forest, miles of silence in every direction. The first few nights were uneventful. A trucker or two would stop by, maybe a late-night traveler grabbing fuel. But mostly it was just me, the hum of the refrigerators, and the occasional moth slamming itself against the buzzing lights. Then came Tuesday night. It was just after 1 in the morning when I first noticed it. Footsteps. Slow, steady, crunching across the gravel outside. I expected to see a customer, but when I glanced at the cameras, the lot was empty. Still, the sound of footsteps grew louder, closer, until they seemed to circle the building. I locked the doors. My hands shook as I gripped the counter, listening. The footsteps stopped, and the silence pressed against the glass. I thought maybe I was imagining things, but then faintly there was tapping on the window. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I forced myself to look. There was nothing. The parking lot was bathed in the harsh white of the lamps, but no one stood there. No car had arrived, yet a damp streak marked the glass, like something wet had leaned against it. I should have called the police, but the phone line was dead. No dial tone, just silence. My mobile had no signal either. Out here, reception was spotty, but that night it was as if the outside world had been cut off entirely. The hours crawled. Every sound set me on edge, the groan of the refrigerators, the creak of the roof, even the hum of the lights seemed sinister. By 3 o'clock, my nerves were shot. That's when the power flickered. For a moment, everything died. No lights, no machines, no sound, only darkness. And in that suffocating silence, I heard breathing. It came from just outside the counter. Deep, wet breaths, inches away. My flashlight beam shook as I swung it toward the sound and caught the briefest, glass, pale, sunken eyes, glimpse of a face pressed to the skin, bloated like it had been underwater for too long. Then the lights returned and the face was gone. The floor beneath the window, however, was wet. I told myself to quit, to leave the keys on the counter and drive away, but fear rooted me in place. I didn't want to move, didn't want to open the door. Around 3:30, a truck finally pulled in. Relief hit me like a wave. A customer meant normality, something human. The driver came inside, bought coffee, and glanced at me. "You all right?" he asked. I muttered something about being tired, but he didn't look convinced. He hesitated, then said, "Strange place this. They say folks go missing out here. You be careful." With that, he left. I watched his taillights vanish down the highway, and in their glow, for the briefest second, I saw someone standing at the edge of the lot, watching me. Tall, thin, too still. When I blinked, they were gone. That was the first night. But it didn't stop there. Every shift after, the presence grew stronger. Shadows moving in the corners of the store, whispers echoing from the back room where no one was. Sometimes the coolers would rattle violently, cans and bottles crashing to the floor, only to fall silent the second I turned my head. The worst was the water. Dark stains began appearing on the tiles. First small puddles, then larger ones, soaking through the mat behind the counter. I mopped them, cursed at the leaks, but the water was always icy cold. Too cold, and it smelled faintly of earth and rot. One night, the puddle stretched all the way down the aisle. At the end of it, lit by the dim fridge lights, stood a man, soaked from head to toe, clothes clinging to him. His skin was pale, eyes sunken, lips blue. I whispered, "What do you want?" He raised one hand, dripping, and pointed to the back door. That door had no windows, no entrance from the outside. It was locked with a heavy bolt from my side. Yet even as I watched, the bolt began to rattle. Metal scraping against metal, as if something was pushing from the other side. I backed away, heart slamming in my chest. The door shook harder. Then, with a groan, it opened. Water poured out, not a trickle, a flood, icy water rushing over my shoes, flooding the aisles. And from the darkness beyond stepped figures. Dozens of them. Men, women, children, all soaked, their eyes pale, their movements stiff. They filled the room silently, water dripping from their bodies, their gazes fixed on me. I stumbled back, slipped, and crashed to the floor. The cold soaked into my bones as they moved closer, surrounding me. Their mouths opened, but no sound came, just water spilling out. I tried to scream, but the air was gone, choked by the freezing flood. My vision blurred. And then through the crowd, I saw him, the first man, the one who always came at 2 a.m. He knelt beside me, his bloated face inches from mine, and whispered a single word. Join. The lights went out. When I woke, I was on the floor of the store, dry, alone. The water was gone. The door was locked. Everything looked normal. But I know it wasn't a dream, because when I stood, the counter was still wet, and pressed into the surface was a handprint, cold, soaked, not mine. And now every night I still go back. I don't know why. Maybe I can't leave. Maybe I already drowned, years ago, and this is the only place I exist. But I do know one thing. At 2:03 a.m., without fail, the man returns. And every night he's not alone.